We're gonna make a beautiful cutting board today. Look at that joint, zero gaps, and it is so easy to do. Hey you guys, I'm so excited. Today I'm going to show you how to make this cutting board. It is so easy. Look at that joint. It has zero gaps. It is so tight. And I think it's beautiful. It's really easy to make. It has feet on the bottom. And this one is made for, I made it for a charity for mission dogs. They train dogs to be service dogs. And last year they contacted me and asked me if I would be willing to donate a cutting board for their silent auction at the gala. And I did. I made an end grain cutting board. And this year they contacted me again and they asked if I would be willing to give one more. So I didn't have time to make an end grade one, but I made this one and I think it's beautiful. So let's show you how I did it. Now let's look at the material that we need to make this cutting board. We do not need a lot of material. I have 2 pieces of wood here. Let me pen you down. So what I have here is I have a piece of cherry. This is 5/4, and this is a piece of walnut. The cherry, as you can see, it's quite wider than my walnut. The cherry is about 7 3/4 inches. The edges are not milled square or anything. And my walnut is about 5.5 inches. They're both about 18 3/4 long. And the thickness, just so you know, is just a tiny little bit over 1 inch, like 1 1/16. So that's what I'm having to start with. And rather than trying to make this wave design in the middle of the board and not being perfectly in the middle, I'm deliberately going to make it offset. So one piece will be a lot smaller than the other one. So that way it's on purpose. Now, if you just take these 2 pieces, put them on top of each other, draw a squiggly line, and you cut it at the bandsaw, and then you try to match them together, you are going to get a gap. And that's because you have the curve of your bandsaw. And the only way to make that gap goes away is to put a thin piece of wood, like a 1/8 inch or something of maple or some contrasty color, and then that will close the gap when you glue it up. However, I do not want to have another color in there, so I want to make it, these 2 pieces of wood go together as good as I can with 0 gaps. For that, I'll be using an acrylic template. And I made the acrylic templates, I designed them and cut them. And I already accounted for the curve of my laser when I cut this. And so that means now if we cut the wood exactly as this template, you only need 1 template, and I have this available. If you're interested, in the description below, I'll have them available on my website and on my Etsy store. And I don't know if you can tell, it's gonna be hard to see it on the silver table. But this is not just a random squiggly line. I designed this so every one of this valley, it's exactly the same as the peak. So that means when you put 2 pieces of wood together, you will get 0 gap. So they will match perfectly in there with absolutely 0 gap and no need to put another strip of wood. Like I said, we will only be using 1 template. I just cut this other template just to show you guys how it works. So I know that if I cut both of pieces of wood exactly as my template, when I put them together, they should go in together perfectly with no gap, just like the 2 acrylic templates went together. So let's do that right now. So the first step on using our template is to trace our template so we can cut it on the bandsaw. So I'm using a Sharpie. I love using a Sharpie when I use templates. So I'll just set this. Let's see, this edge over here, it's a cleaner edge. And I'm going to use my Sharpie, maybe something like this. And now I will trace it. Just like that. And now when we do the cherry piece, As you can see, where we have a valley, we need to have a peak with the cherry. So I'm gonna try to make it. My template is a little bit short for this long of a piece of wood, because you see the template is not going to go all the way when I do this. So that's okay, we'll end up cutting that piece a little bit shorter. So I'm going to set my template, something like that. That is looking pretty good, and I am going to trace it. Oops. Okay, just like that. So now I'm going to go to the bandsaw, and I'm going to cut as close as I can to the line. And I put the template pretty close to the edge, so that when I go to the bandsaw, I don't have to cut on these peaks. I only cut the valleys. So I'm going to go with the bandsaw cut like this, like this, like this, and so on. For my bandsaw, even though I have that big Harvey bandsaw there, it's fantastic bandsaw, it resaws really, really well, and I love it. I purchased this tiny bandsaw. This is a Raycon benchtop bandsaw. I got this on Amazon around Christmas time, and I thought I paid for it about $600, but I just looked it up this morning on Amazon, and it was under $500. And I totally recommend it. It's a fantastic piece of it's a tool. It works perfectly for what we need. And I love having two bandsaws because I have a 1/4-inch blade in here for this kind of curvy cuts. And then on my big bandsaw, I keep my 3/4-inch blade for resawing. So that way I don't have to keep changing blades, and it makes my work in the shop a lot quicker. So I'm gonna go over here to the bandsaw, and I'm going to cut this template quickly. I have made the cuts. As you can see, I didn't do a very good job on this one. I kind of went over the line in a few places. You see it's missing the marker, where by the time I got to the cherry, I had a little bit more experience, and you can see the marker all around. I stayed pretty much on the line. So this one, I didn't do a good job, but it should still work. So I'm going to set my template the way you will get double-sided tape on it. Something like that. I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm going to put a lot of double-sided tape. I felt like every time I tried this template and I ended up with a little bit of gap, usually it's because my template moved. And we do not want this template to move at all. So I'm gonna put way more double-sided tape than I need, just because I want to get it right from the first time. So, this is going to make it a lot harder for me to remove the template, but I'm confident I can still do it. So, tons of double-sided tape. This is just what works for me. If you're really good at cutting templates and making sure that your template stays in place and all that stuff, then do what works for you. For me, always overdo it this step, because I don't want it to shift at all. I don't want any gaps. I want this to be as clean of a glue up as possible. So now we are gluing it in here, and I'm gonna leave about 1/8 of an inch for the router to remove. Something like this should work. I'm a little bit close in here. I hope that's gonna be okay. Make sure it really sticks on in here. And I like to have my piece of wood be shorter than the template. That way it gives me a really easy entry point here without grabbing the piece of wood and creating problems. So that way the ball bearing on the flash trim bit starts on this template, and then it starts cutting the wood, and it has an easy exit too with the template over here that is overhanging from the wood. I hope that makes sense. Make sure my router bit is at the proper height, which it is. I am using a 1/2-inch shank router bit. This is it's an up and down compression bit, and the diameter of the bit is 3/8 of an inch. I just want to show you really quickly, we got a really nice clean cut. However, I do have here a tiny little bit where the template was sticking further than the wood, and I didn't really cut it to flush trim it because the wood was not sticking out from the template. I'm not sure that's gonna create a gap or not, if it's a lot lower or not, but if it does create us a gap, I can move the template just a millimeter or two down and go cut it again, and that should solve that problem. But since I don't know if it's a problem yet, I'm gonna leave it for now. We won't know until we cut the cherry piece and we put them together. Now, removing this template, it is going to be a little trickier because we did put so much of that tape. You have to be careful. It is just a 1/4 inch acrylic, so it could break. But if you are carefully and you go in section, you should be able to remove it. If you find yourself having a lot of trouble removing it all the time, you can use this template to make yourself a thicker template out of, let's say, 3/4 inch poplar or some hardwood. And then you can use that as a template, and you'll be a lot stronger for when you need to remove it. However, because I can cut my own templates, I don't mind. If I break one, I'll just cut a new one. Now, this sticky tape, it's still fairly sticky. I could be using it, but because I'm so paranoid that my template would shift, I will just put all new tape for the cherry piece. The reason why I chose such a large router bit, the 1/2 inch shank and 3/8 for the diameter of the bit, is because when I cut things on the bandsaw, I usually don't cut it so close to the line. I'm not so precise like if I would cut it on a scroll saw. So I always have a little bit more material than I would like to remove, and the bigger the bit, the more material you can remove safely. Now let's see if they actually fit. And we get a really nice, beautiful fit. We will have to cut off this part here because our template was not long enough to make the connection there. But that is really, really good. Now it's time to apply some glue. It will be a really easy glue up. So let's go do that. Now the glue up is going to be very, very simple. I'm going to use this parallel clamps. I love these guys. I've been using them now for a long time in my shop. And as for the glue, I am using Tide Bond 3. If you are new to making cutting boards, then you need to know you need to use a waterproof glue because cutting boards do get washed, and you don't want your cutting board to fall apart while people are washing it. So Tide Bond 3 it is, and you want to put a decent amount of glue in there. Don't skimp on the glue. I like to make one pass and then add more glue and do the second pass. You could put glue on both sides, both pieces of wood, and then put them together. I only do one, but I put a lot of glue, so there'll be plenty for the other one as well. And the glue up is going to be so easy because these boards now they cannot shift this way because they're locked in place by these waves. So we should not have any shifting of the boards. There are only two pieces, so you don't have much chance of them, one going up, one down. I'm just going to hold it down while I start putting pressure on these clamps, do a little bit on one, and then keep moving to the other ones, and then keep tightening. And 3 clamps for this size cutting board, it is plenty. We got a nice squeeze out. We don't want to squeeze it too tight and starve the joint from the glue. And then I'm going to use, you guys have been following me for a while, you know I love these crocodile wet wipes. I use them in the shop, they never dry, and it's true they never dry, and they are really large. So it makes it really easy to clean your hands, clean the glue squeeze out. Very, very handy. Now I'm going to show you, we are getting perfect joint with no gaps at all. So now I'm gonna let this glue dry for a few hours, then we'll come back, we'll sand it, we'll shape it, we'll do the profile edge, and then we'll put the finish on it. So I'll see you in a few hours. Now it's not been a few hours, the board is still in the clamps, waiting to dry up, but because I don't wanna wait, we're gonna work on this other board that I started yesterday. Exactly the same procedure. This is our glue line, as you can see. It looks beautiful, no gaps at all. So because this one is already dry, we're gonna continue working on this one. The same wood, I use walnut and cherry, and this piece of walnut is not the best looking. The one that we did today was better looking, but it's still going to look really nice. And fun fact, this was my last piece of 5/4 walnut, and I'm getting some more. I have a really good source of a very affordable premium quality walnut. I'm going to share that with you guys next week sometimes, where I buy my walnut from. And so make sure you subscribe and click that notification button so you do not miss when I share with you where I buy my wood from, because you might miss a really big sale. So what I did with this board, I cut off the ends, and now we have all square edges. This is the final size of this board. So now what I need to do is do the finishing touches, what I call. And what I like to do, how can I show you this? What I like to do with my boards is decide which one is the front, which one is the back. For me, this one is going to be the front. This one is going to be the back, because the back of the walnut, this one has some sapwood in it, so I much prefer this side. So what I will do now, I will put a very small chamfer on the front, and then in the back I will put a bigger chamfer. And for me, the easiest way to put chamfers on a rectangular cutting board is to do it at the table saw. So that's what I'm gonna do. Now to do this chamfer, I am going to angle my blade to around 45. It doesn't have to be a 45, it doesn't matter what it is. Just angle it enough. All right. So first I'll do the front, so that's gonna have a smaller chamfer. So I'm going to take the front part and put it down on the table, and then I'll make sure I move my fence where I'm removing just a little bit of the material for my chamfer in the front, something like that. So I'll go around, I'll do the long sides, then I'll move the fence a little bit further and do the shorter sides, all on the table saw, and then we'll adjust and we'll do the back part. Chamfers are all done and they look perfect. You see they have a small chamfer on the top, and then we have the larger chamfer on at the bottom. The corners chamfer meet perfectly, and I just think this is a really good modern look. I think it looks better than just a roundover. So I'm liking this. Now it's time to start sanding. I'm going to sand this board from 120 all the way to 180 and stop, and then I'll see you back for the next step. I finished sanding the board up to 180, and I made sure I maintain those corners with the chamfers. Everything still looks perfect. Our joinery looks amazing there. And before I move on to the next step, what I need to do is take some 320 sandpaper and soften all the edges, like the corners, the edges. I want everything to feel nice and soft, no sharp edges. This is not a weapon, this is a cutting board. So I'm gonna do that now. We softened the edges and now it's time to raise the grain. Raising the grain means we will spray this board with water and then we will let it dry. And when you spray it with water, what happens is the fibers on the wood will stand up and the board will feel rough to the touch, even though right now it's fairly smooth. So we will do that. I will spray it with water. I'll just use one of these water spray bottles and I'll spray it, let it dry, and then we'll come back and we'll send to 220. So you want to make sure when you use the 220, your last grit, you do not want to oversand, you don't want to go too long because then you get rid of all those fibers that you just knocked down. And then when the person washes, the fibers stand up again and you have a rough board. So spray it, let it dry, send to 220. Our board is all sanded, it feels very smooth now. I just cleaned it up with some mineral spirit just to get all the dust off. Now, before I go to the finishing, I want to make sure this thing still stayed very flat because there's nothing worse than having a wobbly cutting board on your counter. So my flattest surface in my shop is my table saw table with this cast iron, and put it on my table. It is solid, there's no wobble, so we are good to go. Now, before I put the finish on it, I want to make sure I put my mark on it, my brand. Putting your brand on the things you're making, it is very, very important because it's just like your business card. When you give someone a business card, they typically end up throwing it away. When you put your mark on the back of your item that you're making, they cannot throw that away. And that could come in really, really handy later on when they forget where they bought that item from, but they can look on the back and see where they got it from and they can order more stuff. So there you go. To engrave my mark on this, I'll use my X-Tool F1. It's the most used tool in my shop out of all my lasers. So I'm just going to plop it right on top of my material. And let's see, I am going to frame, see where, so the logo will be right there. You can see the blue outline. I can move it a little bit more this way. Maybe something like that. That looks good to me, I'm happy with that. Stop the framing. And my laser, it is focused right there. So now it's just time to run this file. Engraving, it's done and is looking fantastic. Now before I put a finish on it, I want to pre-drill for the feet. So I'll be using this rubber feet, and I'm going to use this square because it just so happened to have that hole right here. So I'll just put my square on the edge of my board and I'll mark where the hole is. So right there, and then I'll do that for all four corners. I pre-drill for the feet, you can see on there. And now it's time to apply the finish. For the finish, I'm going to keep it super simple. We'll use mineral oil. I'm gonna rub it in with this pad, and then I'm gonna let that soak in for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I'll put another layer of mineral oil, let that one soak in for another 15 minutes, then wipe off all the excess. And then I'm gonna put in my board butter. You can find this on my website. This is just mineral oil mixed with beeswax. So that's what I'm going to use for the finish. Now before I show you the cutting board, let's look at the one that we glue up this morning. I just took it out of the clamps and I ran it through the drum sander just to remove the glue squeeze out. And let's check the joint. You can see very, very tight joint. There's absolutely zero gaps. And this cutting board I'll be finishing tomorrow, and it will be available on my website and on my Etsy store. But this one that we just did, this is what it looks like. And this one, like I said, it's not available. This one is going for a charity. I did finish oiling it. I did not put the board butter yet on it. I ended up putting 3 coats of mineral oil because it was soaking it up. And I want to let this mineral oil dry a little bit more until tomorrow. And tomorrow I'll put the board butter on it before I ship it. But I think it ended up super, super cute. I hope this was useful to you and you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Skylar Ewing and I'll see you in my next video.